We're at a crossroads. In fact, we're here to talk about the crossroads and our intention to make it the new home of the Kansas City Royals. Kansas City is a special place. We have outperformed many of our peers for our care for the heart of our city. Look at the residential growth downtown and the dynamism of the development and redevelopment of the crossroads. The arts, the music, the food and drink. I believe in my gut the timing is right for the Royals to become residents of the crossroads and neighbors to Power and Light, 18th and Vine, and Hospital Hill, helping to further connect the cultural center of our great city.
John Sherman, the owner of the Kansas City Royals, yesterday in a press conference out at Kauffman Stadium, saying, we're going to the crossroads. Of course, that's if you, the taxpayer, ultimately approve the 3/8 cent sales tax that is going to be on the ballot in early April. This tax, of course, has been in place for the better part of 20 years in this town to upgrade Kauffman Stadium and Arrowhead Stadium. And now that money will once again be split, if passed, between the Chiefs to upgrade Arrowhead and the Royals to go downtown to now the crossroads. Now, the renderings are beautiful. The location is the preferred location that I would have picked if I was the Kansas City Royals. It looks great. It looks awesome. Just south of T-Mobile, connects to Power and Light. You get in, obviously, the Crossroads District, which is ever-growing and wildly popular, and you might have a home run on your hands here. But the numbers are still not adding up to me. I can't figure it out. I don't know who's paying what. It's estimated that the 3/8 cent sales tax will generate $300 to $400 million for the Royals and this project. The Royals say they are dumping in $1 billion of their own monies to make this a feasible project. That was said yesterday by Brooks Sherman, who is the president of the team and is not related to the owner, John Sherman.
As we said from the beginning, this is about a lot more than just a new home for the Royals. This generational project is intended for something great for Jackson County and Kansas City, baseball and beyond. It'll build on the momentum that we have seen in recent years in our city, as John talked about. The economic impact of this project in the Crossroads will be the same or better than what we've put forth to you previously, and we look forward to updating you on that as well. The Royals ownership group is wholly committed to this project. As owners, we're prepared to invest privately more than $1 billion of our own money directly into this project in the Crossroads to make it a success.
All right, that's great. $1 billion. So we got $1 billion. I know it's 6:08 in the morning. I'm not asking you to crunch some big math numbers here as we start the show. But let's just do this together. $1 billion from the Royals, outstanding. 300, let's round it up. Let's say $400 million from Jackson County, you, the taxpayer. On a $2 billion project, which are the estimates here, that leaves us short anywhere from $500 to $600 million. Does anyone know who or where that's coming from? Is it the city? Is it the state? It seems unlikely it would be the state, considering Mike Parson, the governor of Missouri, did not have any monies in his budget for either pro sports teams in this town. So there are still a lot of questions. Now, that being said, it looks awesome. It would be a great way to connect Power and Light to the Crossroads and have this full functioning entertainment district. It would help out the Power and Light district, which right now loses money. It is subsidized by the taxpayer in Kansas City. So it's outstanding from what you're connecting together and how it really fits in well to a part of town that is, I don't want to say it's not struggling by any stretch. It's just disjointed. Now, Mark will lose his secret parking spot when he goes down the T-Mobile or Power and Light, but you're going to have to find a new one there, Mark. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, right across the street from the church, right next to the Casey Star building, there was one little spot that I could back my car into that nobody would get to. and it's gone.
It's a goner. So if this, of course, ends up happening, Mark will have to find his new secret downtown parking spot if and when that time comes. But I love everything about it. I really do. I just still want the Royals to answer some more questions. Voting starts on Friday for, military, folks overseas. But, of course, they're going to have to sell this thing. They're going to have to sell this thing to a Crossroads district. And I've heard from a lot of people in the Crossroads who are not happy about this. They're going to have to sell this to Eastern Jackson County folks who like Kauffman Stadium. They're going to have to sell this to the urban core, who many people are saying would have preferred the East Village site because it's closer to certain zip codes that have really struggled over the years and are some of the most impoverished and dangerous zip codes in the city. So they might have preferred the East Village site, ease of access, ease of jobs, things of that nature. Not that this one's difficult, but, some people may frown upon that. So there's a lot of groups that still need to be sold on this. I'm very much open to it. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I saw those renderings yesterday and I said, wow, that's really cool, actually. That looks awesome. I could see myself sitting with my family in left field watching Bobby Witt, in 5 years, in year 5 of his 11-year contract he just signed. I'm not sitting here saying, save the K. The K is dead. Like it or not, it's dead. They're not staying there. And we can bemoan that. We can be upset about it, but we're not changing that fact. So then it becomes, okay, if they're going to move, where, when, why, and how's it being funded? And that remains the biggest question. There still appears to be a several $100 million gap in terms of who's actually funding this thing and where the monies are coming from. And those questions desperately need to be answered as John Sherman goes around town and starts pitching this thing. And, as he noted, he's not a politician, but he's got a big sales job ahead of him.
And we know we have to earn and win every single vote. I am not a politician, but I'm going to be in the community talking about our project. I want to hear from you, and I believe it's important that you hear from me during this campaign and that you know how committed I am to making sure the Chiefs and the Royals remain at home here in Jackson County.
Well, we have invited John Sherman onto this show, the owner of the Kansas City Royals, and we were told that he was going to allow today to be about the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, it is parade day in this town on a Wednesday, Valentine's Day morning, and that's admirable. We have reached out and asked to have him on the show tomorrow, and we hope that that is something we can get lined up. Because I know there's a lot of you at 913-408-7957 who are very skeptical. I got the questions. I got the comments and the feedback on our Facebook page and also on my Twitter page at Pete Mundo yesterday. So we'll be talking about this, obviously, throughout the morning. We have an answer from the Royals, the location, and now we just got to fill in some of the blanks. That's what we have to do here on KCMO Talk Radio. 913-408-7957. You see the Crossroads. It's now final. You in, you out. Hit us up. We'll talk about it throughout the morning. We'll also get the latest on the parade, safety downtown. What's that like right now from KCPD Captain Jake Bikina on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM, and stream us this morning on the KCMO Talk Radio app. It's parade day. I know we're going to have hundreds of thousands of Kansas Cityans and folks from the entire region heading downtown, either on the parade route or, of course, down to the rally at Union Station. And that's where we check in with our buddy here at Cumulus Media. And normally he's down the hall every morning. Tyler Fry hosts mornings on 107.3 The Vibe. Tyler, what's happening there, my man?
Hey, how you doing, Pete? We're live from the North Lawn at the World War I Museum and Memorial. Top of the North Lawn, we are overlooking Union Station. The sun is about to rise up here, but everything is red. The skyline's red. The TVs are going. They're all in red. It's a little chilly start to the morning, but it's fun.
Hey, man, for February, this is pretty damn good. So take me through. Is anyone there yet, like lined up, trying to already get their spot for the parade?
There are in front of the rally, in front of Union Station. I would say probably 1,000 to 2, maybe
Wow.
1,000 people already there. I talked to a couple from Oklahoma this morning, and they got here at 3 a.m.
My goodness, that is diehard. I like that. Most importantly, how many porta potties you see out there?
Well, on the north lawn here, we're loaded. We got.
Okay.
I'm looking at 30 to 40, so we're good. We're good
All
on that
right,
front.
so you guys are good on that side. Okay, good deal. All right, so you're looking at this. You got a good view there from the north lawn in front of World War I. Folks are already lining up. Anything that people should note parking-wise that you've noticed this morning they should take note of as they head on downtown?
Yeah, I noticed coming in from Overland Park, I mean, once you get into the city, a lot of streets are blocked off, so be prepared for that. Probably rideshare is probably the best option. I don't know parking-wise how the later in the morning it gets, how hard it's going to be. But, yeah, I would get here early. If you're going to park, get here early.
All right, good deal. Hey, Tyler, we appreciate you, my man. We'll be checking in throughout the morning.
Thanks, guys.
All right, that's Tyler Fry, 107.3. The Vibe, we'll check in with him. He's down at World War I, and it's going to be a fun morning down across Kansas City.
This Victory Day Parade update brought to you by NKC Dental.
NKC Dental, Kansas City's premier dental practice. Dr. Bush and his exceptional caring team provide treatments in a comfortable atmosphere and have a gentle and friendly bedside manner. Plus snoring and sleep apnea treatments. 2 convenient locations, North Kansas City and West Plaza. NKCDental.com.
All right, good stuff from Tyler Fry. Normally, he's right down the hall, and today he's down on the World War I Museum North Lawn, getting you all set for what's going to be a very exciting day for Kansas City.
If you want to watch the parade, I'd suggest parking up close to the city market and then just walking down. That's seems like that's the easiest way if you're going to try to be on the
start basically at the beginning of the parade route at 6th and Grand.
I think less people will be up toward that.
At the very start of the parade route. Mm-hmm. You're probably right. I think that's a good strategy there, Mark. And since neither of us are going, we don't have to worry about giving out the advice.
Yeah.
So go to River Market and then basically walk on down. You know, our first home here in Kansas City was at 6th and Broadway. So if we were there, that would have been real convenient to just walk on down the street. And, we had private parking underneath the building and the whole thing. So I should probably, there's no way. It's been 5 years since I lived there.
Any old neighbors that still live in there?
Not so much old neighbors. I had a little, key fob that would open up the parking garage. So if that thing still worked, I could sneak into the garage and try to catch the beginning of the parade, now that I'm thinking about it. But I don't know where that key fob is, and there's no way it works anyway. But, yeah, it was a great building, fantastic first year in Kansas City living down there. And going to River Market, seeing everything happening downtown was a lot of fun. Now, as I understand, it's changed a bit since then. They've had the issues with the homeless and things like that they didn't really have a few years back. But either way, it's going to be a great time. 11 a.m. start. Remember, if you've gone in the past, 11 a.m., not noon. They want to clear it out for Valentine's Day, which I understand. Very much understand. Meantime, top of the hour, we're going to have on a guy named David Johnson. He is on the Crossroads board. He's the former president of the Crossroads board. And we're having him on because he is opposed to the Royals and this new ballpark that they rolled out yesterday, the renderings for the Crossroads. They look awesome. If you haven't seen them, they're up on the KCMO Talk Radio page. You can see them there for yourself. But what's interesting is David Johnson is someone and was someone who was an advocate for the streetcar. So Tony's Kansas City wrote this morning about David Johnson, who's going to be here top of the hour. And it's not a gotcha thing. I mean, it's not what I'm trying to do at all. We may view the world differently, but he's, on the Crossroads board. He's the chair of the Kansas City Regional Transit Alliance. He was big on the streetcar getting downtown and getting extended. And those are all things that he's allowed to think and I may disagree with, but it doesn't matter. That's not the point of the conversation. I want to just hear from him as a member of the Crossroads board why he's opposed to the stadium. But Tony's Kansas City kind of wrote a hit piece on him this morning. They wrote, "Savor Kansas City irony. David Johnson quickly stepped out to lead opposition against Kansas City Royals' downtown stadium plans." Tony writes here, "This might be ironic or maybe just hilarious because Mr. Johnson did not have any problem walking all over the people who objected to how the streetcar was forced upon residents after losing a litany of popular votes and then hiding behind a mail-in ballot scheme to garner victory in a low-turnout election." He now writes, Tony does, "Mr. Johnson finds himself on the other side of downtown development momentum. If passed, the new stadium is going to stick its thumb in everything the Crossroads has worked to build." So David Johnson had a tweet that went viral yesterday. He said, "Important note, the KC Crossroads lobbied hard for a tax abatement and subsequent renewal for artists and art-related tenants. What do we value as a city for this neighborhood that puts KC on the national map?" That was put out by David Johnson yesterday. So he's not a fan of this. So this is, I said yesterday, Mark, that we may end up in a situation where conservative-leaning folks in Eastern Jack and more progressive folks downtown may end up coming together and forming this alliance to stop the Royals from going downtown.
I could see that happening.
It is politics makes strange bedfellows. I will leave it at that as we approach the top of the hour on KCMO Talk Radio. You could have uber progressives in the Crossroads and just across downtown teaming up with more conservative folks in Eastern Jack to potentially stop this from happening. Now, right now, I would say it's going to happen, but who knows? Stuff can get a little crazy. I just saw this on X. It is the coolest thing I've seen at a parade route. I just shared it at Pete Mundo. It is a family that literally set up a living room. I mean, they have couches and recliners at 7th and Grand near the start of the parade route. It is the coolest thing ever. I mean, I don't even know how they got these. I mean, I understand you can put anything in a truck, a pickup. But Mark, look at this setup. I just put it up on X at Pete Mundo and shared it. Marlia Campbell from KCTV5 had it up, and I just reposted it. It is a full living room. I mean, there's like a coffee table. They've got a light. It looks like someone just transported their living room to 7th and Grand. They got a little rug sitting on top of the concrete. This thing is nuts.
Kind of looks like a dorm room setup almost.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give them this much. It's much higher quality furniture. Like, that's not furniture I had in college. It's nice leather couches. Look at this. They got rocking chairs, the whole thing. Got a little Dunkin' Donuts there along the parade route, and they're just kind of kicking it. It's a great scene.
That's the way to go. That
is the coolest setup along a parade route I could possibly imagine. That is awesome. Oh, man, you can see it there for yourself. I just reshared it, so it's very cool. All right, at 8:07, we'll keep you up to speed on what's going on downtown. Jake Bikina, KCPD captain, will join us throughout the morning here on KCMO as he has throughout the first couple of hours of the show. But it is Valentine's Day as well. So understand this. If you're going out downtown, one of the reasons the parade is starting at 11 versus 12 is because the city, rightfully so, wants to clear out downtown as quickly as they can so restaurants can try to get some Valentine's Day business. However, if you're planning on doing a ride share, you and your significant other, going to Uber, you're going to Lyft to dinner, have a couple of glasses of wine and the whole thing. You still should do that. However, it might be harder to get an Uber tonight because thousands of drivers for ride-hailing services and food delivery riders like DoorDash in the U.S. and the U.K. are planning to strike today in disputes over pay and working conditions. And if you've driven Uber or DoorDash or you are doing it, you've done it in the past, it doesn't matter. I want to hear from you at 913-408-7957, either on the text line or on the phones, 913-408-7957, because they're basically trying to unionize this operation. I think that's the end goal here. The article from CNN says, in America, campaign group Justice for App Workers, Justice for App Workers, said in a blog post last week that drivers for Uber and Lyft, as well as riders for DoorDash, were sick of working 80 hours a week just to make ends meet. The group represents, it claims, 130,000 drivers and delivery workers across the East Coast and the Midwest. And they wrote that its members plan to stop giving rides to and from all airports in major cities across the country for at least 2 hours today. Now, I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know if that's going to, make a major impact here in Kansas City, but no, it's possible, right? At least know it might be harder to get riders today or get cars today because of this strike. But I'm sitting here and I'm saying to myself, okay, is Uber, is Lyft, is DoorDash meant to be a full-time gig? Now, I know plenty of people who have done it, and they've done it to supplement income. They've done it to, like Dave Ramsey callers will be like, hey, I'm trying to pay off debt, right? So I've got my job, and then every spare second I have, I am going to DoorDash, I'm going to Uber because I just want to pay down this debt and get rid of this debt and move on with my life. And that's great. But is it truly meant to be a full-time gig? And if you can turn it into a full-time gig, is that Uber's fault? Or is that you having to look in the mirror and say, you know what? Maybe this isn't really a career path, which it's really not. Now, it might be something you enjoy doing. I have a good friend who's done it for years. Be your own boss, work when you want to work, fill in the gaps around your jobs, and life's good. But is it Uber's fault that you feel like you've got to work 80 hours a week to make ends meet? I don't know. I'm just asking the question because I don't have the answer. But I've never perceived that Uber is screwing the worker. In many ways, it might not make you the amount of money that you want to make, but you have the flexibility, right? You don't have to be accountable to anybody. You just can't break the law while you're driving cars. That's all you got to do. You work when you want to work. You turn the app on. You turn the app off whenever you want to do it. There are pros and cons to that. So there's things that people like, but okay, it may not make you the most amount of money. That's how the world works. 913-408-7957. Jonathan's in Kansas City. He is a former Uber driver. All right, give me the skinny here, Jonathan. What do you got?
So I started doing Uber at the pandemic, and actually the money was pretty good back then because they had trouble finding drivers. So they were doing a lot of bonuses, and the pay was actually pretty good, and they also took less of the fare. And then about a year or two, when the inflation started getting bad a year or two ago, the rates went up for riders. And you think, okay, it's going to the drivers. No, actually, not only are the rates going up, but the higher percent of the rates is going to the company. So you get less of the fare as a driver. And now the bonuses are a lot less. Like you used to be able to make $800 a week in bonuses on top of your regular earnings and tips. Now it's like you're lucky if you get $50 to $200. And so our incomes were being cut as the costs went up with especially gasoline and all that and auto maintenance. I blew a head gasket last year, and that's when I stopped doing it. It's just not worth it anymore. It's not worth the headache.
So what were you, out of curiosity, with the bonuses plus just the regular wages, what were you making at the peak with everything?
I mean, at the peak, a lot of it depends on how many hours you put in.
Yeah.
But if you were lucky, I mean, maybe you did $50 an hour, but that's on the high end. Mm-hmm. After a while, most of the time, I mean, you're lucky if you were getting, 20, 25 an hour. But now you're lucky if you even get 20. Like the pay just keeps going down. And from what I hear in the industry, and who knows what's going to happen in the future, but from what I hear is they're deliberately not making it sustainable for drivers because the plan is to go self-driving anyway, in which point you don't need drivers anymore.
Yeah, but we're a ways away from that.
But the thing is, I've talked to some people in the business,
mm-hmm.
and as much as the media tells you, oh, here's where we're at, the technology is 20 steps ahead of what the media is reporting. A lot of it they're doing behind the scenes. They're doing, prototype testing with self-driving. And, of course, the companies aren't always going to tell you product development because a lot of that's trade secrets. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're further along than maybe people realize.
Wow. Jonathan, thank you for that perspective. Really appreciate it. So here's what's going to have to happen potentially. So few people will have to want to do Uber or Lyft to then the company's classic supply and demand. It sounds like basically Uber and Lyft got to the point where they had more people who wanted to drive for them than they really had need for drivers. So they were able to drive down the percentage that people were making off of each ride. So it's going to have to get to that tipping point where suddenly they're going to have to incentivize people to come back to drive with bonuses and all the things he was mentioning, a higher cut of the ride to get people back into their good graces. But by the way, I'm just spitballing here. I don't know for sure what the deal is on this. But when you've had an influx of 8.5 million people into the country and a lot of them don't really have any skill set, I mean, I don't think they can drive Uber because I don't know how they would get a driver's license, but just throwing out an idea there, I don't know. And with people trying to make ends meet in this economy, there might be a lot of folks, too, who have a job, but then just to try to scrape it all together and afford what has been a massive increase in living the last 3 years, they may be actually fine with the amount of people who are trying to drive for them because people are picking up second and third jobs. 913-408-7957. Got this DM just now on X. Pete, I DoorDash a supplement. You can make a living in Uber or DoorDash, but each delivery offers you a certain amount of money. I make $450 a week, and I agree with everything that the Uber driver just said on the call. All right. 913-408-7957. We'll get to more of you. And also we'll get a check-in from what's happening downtown right here on KCMO 95.7 FM. Of course, monitoring everything going on downtown. We'll get back to you and your calls at 913-408-7957. Wanted to check in as we have throughout the morning. Jake Bikina, KCPD captain, is here on KCMO. All right, Jake, 8:20 now. How are things continuing to change across downtown?
Definitely still steady increase in people. I've gotten lots of pictures from the crowd. The beginning part of the route is starting to thicken up with several people thick, I think, along the rails. And the rally area down by Union Station, there's dozens and dozens every minute coming in there. It's definitely growing.
That is awesome. Okay. And not overcrowded yet. Still room for folks who want to get down there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's lots and lots of room. I would say we are ahead of where we were at this time last year, though, for sure.
Okay, so ahead of where you were last year, but still time for people to get on down there. And remember, we haven't touched on it yet, Jake, but this parade will begin at 11 a.m., and in previous years it was noon, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, last year it started at noon. So if you think about where you were this time last year, we're basically an hour ahead of schedule from where you would have been at this time last year.
Got it. Okay. And that's to be expected. So folks can get on down there. Road closures across downtown. Anything new that's been closed in the last hour or two?
No, the same setup is in place. If you look on the map on the website, it shows where there's pedestrian crossings. That is still in effect. I believe it will be, by the time we speak again, the route will be secured, and there will be a period of time when those pedestrian crossings are closed, and that should be in the 9 o'clock hour, I believe. So whichever side you're on at that point, that's the side you're going to be on.
Got it. Okay, so we'll be watching, we'll be monitoring, and I'm seeing some pretty cool setups along the parade route. There's a guy at 7th and Grand who brought his he's got a recliner down there. He's got his couch. I mean, people have really decked out. What are you seeing, Jake Bikina?
I saw the same thing. That one's kind of making its way on Twitter. I've seen that circulating. I think that setup will have its own Twitter handle by the end of the day. It's a full living room. It's a full living room setup with a lamp and everything. They own a costume and like a stage prop setup company, and they just brought a bunch of stuff from that down and set it up.
That makes more sense. Okay, I just shared the picture on my social media, and I'm like, there's got to be some backstory here. So now you are not just giving us the security perspective. You are now a full-blown reporter, Jake Bikina with KCPD. Well done, Jake. Thank you for the time, as always. We'll talk to you next hour.
Absolutely. Yep, we'll talk to you soon.
All right. That is Jake Bikina, KCPD captain on KCMO Talk Radio. All right. We've been having this conversation. Uber and Lyft drivers and DoorDash drivers, at least some of them, are expected to strike today in the U.S. to send a message to the companies that they're not happy with their wages. We've heard from callers and texters this morning basically saying that, this used to be much more profitable than it was, and that Uber keeps taking a larger percentage of the rides, and the bonuses are not nearly what they used to be. Dan's in North KC on KCMO. What's up, Dan? Good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. Another great conversation. I remember years ago when Uber first came around, then the taxi drivers threw up their arms and said, no, we can't do this, and then Uber said, yeah, it's free enterprise. We're going to do what we want. And there was a huge discussion around it, and it went through anyway. And now it's come full circle, and they say, you know what, we need more money. We're going to unionize. So I'll shut up and listen now, but it's ridiculous how things come around,
No, well, here's the thing. Uber is still going to say that we're just doing this off the free market. Uber still has the free market argument, like it or not. Now, I'm not saying they're doing things the right way. I don't know all the intricate details of, what they're paying people as a percentage of the ride versus what they used to. But until they feel that their business is getting impacted by it, they're not going to go back to where they were a couple of years ago and what the payouts were. You had a caller earlier who said he did it during COVID and he was making money hand over fist. Now, that makes sense, right? If less people wanted to drive because they were afraid of COVID, then suddenly you've got to entice people to get out there and drive. And, money talks. We all know that. But now if they feel like, hey, we've got a larger supply of drivers, because anyone can sign up for Uber, right? If we have a larger supply of drivers than we really have a need, then we can effectively lower the payouts because our supply of drivers is exceeding our demand for drivers. Now, I've done Uber plenty and Lyft and whatnot. I've never done DoorDash in my life. And I say that proudly because between the cost of food going, suddenly a $15 burger and fries, when you factor in a tax, DoorDash fees, a tip, it's going to run you $25. It's freaking insane. Like, out of principle, not that I can't or wouldn't want to do it once in a while because we all get lazy, but I can't get myself to do that, Mark.
Yeah, we got a couple gift cards from DoorDash after we had the baby, just from people from our church being nice to us.
Yeah.
And for a family of 4, 2 girls that eat kids' meals, not very much, it was like almost $100.
Really?
And usually it's like half of that if we go somewhere.
So was it the fees and then you tip on top of the fees?
Yeah.
Wow.
And they upped the price of the meals, I think, a little bit.
Oh, there's a surcharge on the meals.
I think so.
So what'd you do, like McDonald's or something?
No, we did Joe's KC once.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it was, another time I think we did 54th Street. So
wow.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't. In this economy, as the saying goes, I do not understand that at all. I guess if it's not an object, and in the end, Americans will pay a premium to be really lazy. That is one thing. You appease to the laziness of Americans, you can have yourself quite a business. I guess that's America, and that's the moral of the story in the end. All right, coming up, the CPI report dropped yesterday. What does that mean when it comes to the markets, the economy at large, and how this thing plays out going forward? Aaron Hedlund with the Show Me Institute is going to be here. We'll have a parade update end of the hour, What If Wednesday, as well as we approach 9 o'clock on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM, and stream us on the KCMO Talk Radio app. One of the questions that many of you have asked is, well, if the Chiefs can renovate Arrowhead Stadium with their portion of the sales taxes that you're going to vote to extend coming up in April, why can't the Royals do that? Yesterday, during this press conference that took place, Earl Santee, he's the architect at Populous. They're an enormous architectural firm here in Kansas City, and they do a lot of the stadiums. They've done the new Rams and Chargers Stadium in Los Angeles. I mean, they do some of the biggest stadium projects, not just in the country, but in the world. And we've got them right here in Kansas City. Earl Santee answered that very question. And I want to ask you at 913-408-7957 as to whether or not you're buying it.
So let me begin by talking a little bit about the K. So for us, and my backgrounds, I've been working at the K since the early 1990s. We've renovated, we've maintained it, we've sustained it. But renovating the K going forward is just not feasible. It's not realistic. And since 2007, we had an independent structural engineer come in and take a look at the K, and they identify the initial phase that we call ASR. This has been out in the public, it's been in the media. It just happens to be what it is. It causes the concrete to fail at some point. Now, all that means is that in 40 years it may fail, but it's going to fail at some point. So the ability to maintain the current structure is not really feasible.
So the concrete's going to fail at some point. No one really knows when. An independent study was done back in 2007, which, by the way, was a year after the last tax was passed to upgrade the K. I mean, is this like one of those things like eventually all our houses are going to sink kind of a deal? Like that is true. Might not be for 200 years, but it's going to sink. Listen, I'm pretty simple in terms of how I look at this. Have you been to Europe? You look at buildings that are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old, right? And yeah, they've gotten upgrades and updates throughout the years, throughout the decades and centuries. But, you can walk into a building that's hundreds of years old, and there it is. Now, I understand it doesn't have 20,000 people in it, 30,000 people in it, 81 days a year. But once again, as a simple man, I'm just trying to understand it. I would rather the Royals just say, and I say this as somebody who has not been the sports talk guys in this town have really, I think, done their audiences a disservice by just blindly saying whatever the teams want them to say. And that's partially because they want to get in their good graces. They want to be invited to games at the new stadium. They want to get slaps on the back and be told, oh, yeah, you guys helped us get this thing done. Congratulations. They are looking for that adoration. They seek it. That's part of how they get their self-worth and self-approval. But in the end, what they're supposed to be doing is looking out for the fan. And so many of them in this town have not done it. I've taken the approach of saying, I get why the Royals want to move. Now, I love the K, but I get the business model as to why they want to move. They want to be in a downtown setting. They want to be able to make money on other revenue streams beyond just baseball. And they've seen that model work elsewhere in the country, where you have revenue streams from other restaurants and bars and, real estate, rentals, leases, commercial, everything else. I understand it. I'm not against it. I just want to make sure they're truly being transparent with the taxpayer. And I'd rather have the Royals say, this isn't really about concrete at the ballpark. Because if you really wanted to, I'm sure you could figure out a way to fix the concrete. It's about you guys seeing a business model that works better in a sport that doesn't have a salary cap, which means you have to figure out other revenue streams to try to stay ahead. Because the New York Yankees have a TV deal that pays 5 to 10 times, and I'm just ballparking here, 5 to 10 times what your TV contract pays you. It's not like the NFL. where there's equal revenue sharing and there's a salary cap. That's not the case in Major League Baseball. So I don't want to hear about the concrete. I don't want to hear about you have to move because of the concrete. Concrete, it's 2022. It's 2024. What the hell am I talking about? I'm getting all bent out of shape here, Mark. I'm glad it's not 2022. Thank God it's an election year.
Yeah.
Just leave it at that, all right? We've gotten through the worst of it. I don't want to go back to 9-10% inflation in 2022. It's 2024. We have more power on this phone in my hand than NASA had when it put a man on the moon. Don't tell me that the only option is to get rid of the K and go downtown, when I have more power and more technological advancements in my hand than NASA had to put a man on the moon. I don't want to hear about the concrete anymore. Just sell me on why downtown is a great place for the Royals and a great investment for Kansas City and for Jackson County and the region at large, and why this vision makes sense, whether you're a baseball fan and you want to see this team succeed on the field, or you're not a baseball fan, but you want to see economic growth for the city, the county, and the region. Just sell me on that. Leave the concrete out of it. Because anybody who's just got, 2 cents worth of common sense is going to say, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And I'm not going to hear about independent studies that, let's be honest, they're rarely independent. You can get a quote-unquote independent study to say whatever you want it to say if you fund it. So enough of that. 913-408-7957. That's our studio line. That's our text line here on KCMO Talk Radio. 913-408-7957. Ed's in Raytown. What's up, Big Ed?
Yeah, the way I look at it is, remember, they always build things as cheap as they can. So they put maybe cheap concrete in. But on the other hand, look at all these things out there they advertise on TV that you can strengthen contract. Cement by putting, preservatives on it. So I know there's got to be some product out there that would strengthen it, but I think it's stupid. I do think that we need to stay where it is right now because it's a good stadium,
Yeah.
And all they have to do is find something to cover that up with, and they need to be back in. Look at all the money they'd be wasting. And what are they going to do with it anyway after they tear it down?
Well, that's one of the many questions, Ed, thank you, that need to be answered. Who tears it down? Who pays for it to be torn down? Are the Royals paying for that? Are the Chiefs paying for that? Because the Chiefs are going to do something with that space. Is the county paying for it, i.e. you, the taxpayer? All those questions have not been answered and need to be answered. On the text line, 913-408-7957. Pete, I was listening to the press conference yesterday, and there was a part where John Sherman talked about the fact that they don't have to necessarily stay in Kansas City. There's no contract that says that. Made me feel like he was threatening us, the people and the fans, that they would move, and that ticked me off. I didn't see that line. I caught most of the press conference. I didn't see that line. But listen, I think that would be a major mistake to even have that conversation right now. Just be a cheerleader through April. I do think there's a better chance than not that the sales tax extension passes because there's not a new tax there. It's just an extension. And I would not go down that road of, well, we might leave. That's just to the point of that texture. All that's going to do is piss people off. Kevin's in Overland Park. He's next up. Hey, Kevin, good morning.
Hey, Pete. Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying as well. That they just need to be honest with what they're really wanting to do with the additional revenue they want to generate with hotels, restaurants, or whatever. And the deal about the concrete is like, okay, that was from a study in 2007, so that you could do more improvements, and you did more improvements on the place. So if you had a report saying the concrete's going to fail, you wouldn't add to the place or change the place or whatever unless there was drastic, repairs done to make it where it would last. To me, that's BS as well. And then finally, it's like, I'm looking at the small businesses that are leasing properties around that area that are going to get pushed out and have to figure out a way to relocate. It's like, okay, you can buy the property from the property owners, but what about those small businesses that are just out in the streets?
And that was a point. That's a great point, Kevin. That was brought up this morning by a guest we had on, David Johnson. He's on the board of the Crossroads District, and he said, hey, it's one thing if you own the building and you get a sweet deal from the Royals to buy it, but your tenants who are just leasing the property and are small business owners, they don't have a choice. Where do they go? What do they do? It's an interesting point that also needs some answers. So John Sherman is going to turn into a politician, and he has to turn into a politician, whether he likes it or not, even though he says he isn't one.
And we know we have to earn and win every single vote. I am not a politician, but I'm going to be in the community talking about our project. I want to hear from you, and I believe it's important that you hear from me during this campaign and that you know how committed I am to making sure the Chiefs and the Royals remain at home here in Jackson County.
We'll see. We'll see how good a politician he is. We invited him on the show today. We were told they wanted to give today to the Chiefs, so we invited him on tomorrow. And we're looking forward to that conversation. Hopefully it will end up happening. We still got the request in. Meantime, we will get you caught up on the safety issues happening downtown right now. We'll get our caller of the day lined up as well. Busy 9 o'clock hour on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM.